Alright guys, so we're going to hop right into the Neuro editor here with our Helix delay engine pulled up and our Shimmer's reverb engine. These are our two main engines for all of your pitch shifting needs on Encounter, and we tried to make them sort of as flexible as possible so you could really add pitch shifting to whatever kind of sound you're going for. So let's start out by taking a sort of in-depth look at Helix. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn both sides off so you can hear my dry. It's like this. And then I'm going to turn the delay side on, and we'll start out by just looking at the Helix. So the default Helix sound is an octave up, pitch shifted, and reversed. So let's hear what that sounds like. So the first thing I want to go through here is this Control 1 menu, which is going to be the Control 1 knob on the pedal. It changes what the pitch shift interval is. And on the knob you have 5 options. It's 1 octave down, minus a fourth, unison, and then plus a fifth, and up an octave. But in Neuro we have a really big menu of pitch shifting options. And you can it goes all the way up to plus an octave, plus all these things, and minus an octave, minus different intervals. So you can really get whatever specific interval you want here. Just to try out a couple through, we can listen to minus perfect fifth, for instance. I'm going to increase the delay time here so you can really hear the pitch shifting well, and turn up the mix a little bit as well. So you can hear that's in reverse if I go like this. And also the intervals are compounding on each other. So that's what this pitch mode knob changes, which is Control 2 on the pedal, and just switches between these 4 options. So by default, the classic Helix sound that was on the Nemesis is reverse and compound shifting. But this could be, we've separated this out into a few different options. So you could also have reverse repeats but hold the pitch shift, have a forward repeat and hold the pitch shift, or forward and also compound the pitch shifting. So, real quick, I'll just go through these. I'm going to change it back to an octave so that it's nice and easy to hear what's going on. So again, if we listen to reverse and compound, you'll hear it in reverse, but going up in pitch. And that will just keep compounding up until this sort of treble filter cuts it out from getting too high. So you could bring this down if you wanted it to sort of not get quite as bright up there at the top end. And here it's a little more muted as we get to those higher repeats. But I'm going to leave it here so you can hear what's going on easily. And then let's switch it to hold. So you'll hear here, it will stay at that octave as the repeats continue. And then we can go forward. So you can hear now that is not reversed anymore, and it's staying at that same octave. So what is something cool you can do in this mode that I like, this forward and hold, is bring the delay all the way down to 0. And the mix, will increase the mix some, and we'll bring down diffusion so the repeats are really clear. This sort of smears them out, gives it a bit of more ambient character. And we basically have a polyphonic pitch shifter. And if you wanted, you could load up a second Helix over here in parallel. I think we have a preset in the pitch shifting pack that's coming out with this called Sub and Up that does this, where you have one Helix over here that's an octave up on the forward and hold, and one Helix over here that's an octave down. And you get an octave up, octave down in polyphonic, which can make for some really cool sort of lead sounds. But back to this menu, the last one is forward and compound. I'll bring the delay back up so you can hear what's going on. And you also notice the feedback pattern has changed a little bit depending on if it's forward or reverse. So you can get a lot of really interesting sounds just from these two menus. So pretty nice. And then also in the Helix Designer, we have a couple other controls. We have diffusion, which, like I said, kind of smears your repeats. So if we bring this way up, you hear it has kind of a more airy feel to it. And also a distortion knob, which is pretty subtle but can be used to add a little more kind of grit to the repeats. It's not nearly as noticeable as, say, the saturation effect on noise tape, but it just sort of lets them punch through the mix a little stronger. Especially when combined with that diffusion, you can start to get a little bit of lo-fi there, which is cool. And then we have a tremolo, which is locked to the mod rate here. And this is nice if you have, even though we have our delay time pretty high here, because we're pitch shifting up by an octave, the repeats come in pretty fast and they repeat pretty quick, even with a long delay time. So if you want to just add a little more space to your playing, you don't want it to get too overloaded, even with a high mix, you can bring in this tremolo to sort of pan things back and forth and open up the playing a little bit. So you can hear going back and forth. If I crank this mod rate up, you can get some other interesting tones. So pretty fun. And then we have, just like how we talked about in the last video, we've got our common controls for each delay engine, the delay time, the feedback, some modulation and mod rate, and then our EQ and mix controls here. So that's the Helix side of things. That's we tried to sort of put everything you could want in a pitch shifter delay in one engine. And on the reverb side of things, we have Shimmers. So not Shimmer, it's a new engine that hasn't been on a Source Audio pedal yet. Ventris had Shimmer, which only had one voice, and Collider had that as well. But now we have what I think and hope is the most flexible and useful pitch shifting reverb that we've developed yet, which has two independent voices. And you have a lot of fine-tuned control over what intervals these voices are set at, sort of how they feed back, and how much of that is part of the mix. So let's give it a listen. Just the default sound is like this. So you can hear we've got an octave down and an octave up. One thing I want to point out right off the bat is this voice balance control. So you see we have octave down and octave up, but the octave down is a little bit harder to hear just because our ears perceive the higher octaves as louder than the lower octave. So what we can do is, this is like a balance control that shifts between voice 1 all the way to the left and voice 2 all the way to the right. So if we bring this all the way down, we'll only hear that lower octave. But we can set it to maybe like here and just get a little more of that lower octave than the higher octave to make them sound a little more balanced. A little bit of a deeper reverb. So just like on Helix, these are our interval selection menus. It's not quite as many options as with the delay, but you still have everything from minus an octave and all the intervals in between up to 2 unison options that we'll get into, minus 10 cents and plus 10 cents, and up to plus an octave or plus 2 octaves for some really high shimmer tones. But for now, I'm going to leave it at minus an octave and plus an octave because I like this. I'm going to bring the balance up a little bit more, and we'll talk about these other 2 controls. So this is control 1 on the pedal. It goes through a couple pre-selected combinations, the first of which is minus an octave and plus an octave. And then control 2 is pitch mix. So this controls how much of the pitch shifted reverb, both of the pitch shifted voices, are in your sort of final wet mix. So if we bring this all the way down, we'll only hear the dry reverb. And here's a little bit of modulation baked into there, just to give it kind of a deeper, richer sound for these pitch shifting tones. And the regeneration and the voice balance, none of this is going to do anything if your pitch mix is all the way down. But the other thing we can do is make pitch mix all the way up, and that means we will only hear the pitch shifted reverb. So it's really powerful sounding. I usually like to leave it somewhere in the middle, but for now I want to show you guys something how the pitch mix interacts with the pre-delay. So on this engine, the pre-delay actually only affects the pitch shifted signal. So if we have this all the way down and we increase our pre-delay all the way up, you won't hear any difference. But if I make this all the way to the max, you'll hear the full signal get delayed. You can hear it sort of continue to regenerate. That's what this regeneration knob is. So you can hear it continuing to octave down and octave up. So what's kind of cool is if I have pitch mix way up, I don't even necessarily have to have it way up. I could bring it down to like here. Then I increase regeneration quite a bit and feedback quite a bit, and I make pre-delay super long. You almost get like delay repeats on your reverb. So that sounds like this. I'm going to bring down the treble a little bit so it doesn't get quite as ringy up in those high frequencies at the end of the feedback tail. But that's a really cool tone, I think, and you know, just an interesting way of using the shimmers. And if we bring this all the way up, you won't get any of that dry, and you will just hear those repeats. So pretty cool. Now, if you want to use, let's say you want just sort of a basic shimmer sound and you want to use this pre-delay, also have it affect your dry, what you can do is pick one of these options. So let's say pick one of the unison options. So we have minus 10 cents and plus 10 cents. So a little bit detuned, but it really just adds to the sort of the big width, makes it sound a little more modulated, a little more rich. I'm going to bring down the regeneration some. Make sure to leave pitch mix at max so that we're only hearing this wet signal. And then now this will behave basically, if you consider this plus 10 cents voice as your dry signal, this will basically behave like a regular pre-delay. So all the way down, we'll hear everything right away. All the way up, or further up, and we'll hear it delay. And now this voice balance knob basically becomes a way to switch between your dry signal, or basically dry, voice 1, and your pitch shifted one. So if we bring this all the way down, we'll just get the 10 cents voice, but with that pre-delay. And then, you know, all the way up, same thing, just an octave, but with the pre-delay. So that's the Shimmers engine. The controls, you know, you can do a lot, like I said, you can do a lot of interesting things here and get really sort of nitpicky with the voices, and then also, you know, really tweak the way that the shifting happens to get whatever kind of tone you're looking for there, whether that's a more straightforward, you know, single octave classic shimmer tone like we have here, or something a little crazier. So now what I want to do is make a preset that uses both the Helix and the shimmers for some just really pitch shifting ambient cool tones. So let's turn the other side back on. And my idea here for this, what I want to do is have Helix octave up and then shimmers do an octave down and bring it back down. So I'm going to reset some things here. I'm going to bring the voice balance back to the middle, the pitch mix somewhere in the middle as well. I'm going to leave this one at 10 cents because I want some of that dry, just sort of detuned voice in there. And then I'm going to make this down an octave. So if we scroll up here to minus an octave, and I'll give it a little more of the octave by increasing the voice balance some. We're set in cascade, so the Helix will go into that. And I'm going to reset this back to reverse and compound, which is just sort of our typical Helix tone. Let's just hear what this sounds like. I'm going to bring the distortion back down some too. It's a little too much feedback for me on the Helix. I do like the long feedback. Let's see if we can get the pre-delay to kind of line up with the delay itself. I'm going to make this a little bit longer here, so the octave doesn't quite kick in until you hear that first Helix repeat. Might have made it too long. I'm going to bring up the mod depth on the shimmers just to add a little more movement to this tone. So I'm pretty happy with that. That's a nice sound. I like how the Helix octave up, you get those kind of twinkles, but it's sort of brought back down to earth by that octave down on the shimmers. Sort of balance each other out. Nothing gets too bright or too rumbly. So I'm really happy with this tone. As we looked at before, we can hear how it sounds through soundcheck here before we publish it. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this down a little bit and just give it a listen with this chords with space clip. Nice. Yeah, so I'm really liking how that sounds. Let's go ahead and save it to my library. This is a good name for it. We'll leave it Helix Shimmers Combo. We'll say Helix octave up into Shimmers octave down. And here we have our sound check default again, which I just checked. I'm happy how it is. I'm going to leave it how it is, and I can save this to my library. Now again, we went through this in the last video, but I just want to show you again. If you want to publish this preset, we can open our preset panel over here on the right, go to my library, and we can hit publish on it. I don't need to change any of this information. I'm happy with it, so I'm going to go ahead and hit publish, and now it's available for the community to play with. And if I wanted to put this on my pedal, I can open this sidebar over here, and there's actually, I was working on this preset earlier, so there is one already there, but all I need to do is just take this and drag it over here. I'll replace the first preset, and now it is on my pedal. I could also save it from up here to my pedal. So yeah, so that's our pitch shifting algorithms on Encounter. Hope you enjoyed watching and listening, and stay tuned for more tips and tricks in Neuro 3. Thanks for listening.